Okay, so I wanted to make a video on Cilium. This is a container network interface that is very popular as of today. It's been adopted by Google Cloud, it's been adopted by AWS for EKS Anywhere, and it's also been recently adopted in the last, I'd like to say, 6 months from Microsoft Azure as being the backbone of the native Azure CNI. Right, so before we get into what CNIs are, I just want to give a brief overview before I jump right into it. So I'm going to deploy on an AKS cluster Cilium and eBPF mode. Now again, I will link the source code in a GitHub repository. So if you want to relaunch this, you just have to fill out the variables. I did this kind of quickly, put this together, did some testing. I was trying to deploy a couple Helm charts on this, but I think I got a good demo up and running to show you some of the capabilities of Cilium, but also how would you leverage that in Terraform, right? So let's jump right into it. So what is Cilium, right? Let's start there before we just jump into actually deploying it. So Cilium is essentially a container network interface. It's open source. It's used to secure network connectivity between your application services. And really at the foundation, what makes Cilium different from your native CNIs that you see, such as like Flannel, Calico as well, right? Calico now supports eBPF as well, but really the foundation of Cilium is the Linux kernel technology eBPF. So just a quick rundown. Essentially, it is loaded at the kernel level. It gives you full visibility from the security aspect, but also control logic for syscalls and things of that nature. This really is powerful in the sense that it's at the hub of what makes Cilium so fast. It uses data paths as well, but they also have a lot of feature-rich capabilities out of the box. Really notably is Hubble. Hubble is essentially a observability portal, but it also works at the command line as well, so you can kind of see what the communication is across your cluster, getting that visibility and communication is such as the behavior, right? If anything goes awry, it's very powerful. I've done a lot of demos on this, but just wanted to show you what is Cilium? That's a quick overview, right? I'm not giving it too much justice, but also from the Azure Kubernetes side, this has native support, right? We did have Cilium in preview. You could deploy an AKS cluster essentially without a CNI and then install the CNI. I'm going to just install it directly using Terraform, right? And then you can also leverage the CNI for more capabilities as service mesh. I also am deploying Istio, and I'll show you what that code looks like as well later on. So moving into the features, right? Essentially, let's get into observability is the first one. That's really the key concept with any CNI. You want to be able to observe any of those services from microservice to microservice. How are those workloads behaving in real time, right? You also want to be able to trace and export some of those areas. And really, Cilium's backbone, in my opinion, is really on their observability, but along with their networking side. So it does identity aware at layer 3, layer 4 DNS network flow logs. It also does egress gateway. It also has rolled out the gateway API. I believe it's on version 1.140 that recently came out a couple days ago. Very fast moving project, a lot of support. You'd likely heard of Isovalent. I'm probably not saying it right. That's essentially their enterprise offering, but they do a lot of training in this area as well, along with the newsletter. They also provide cluster mesh. I haven't tested the cluster mesh capabilities fully yet, but I plan to. And then they also have released what is known as Tetragon, which is their eBPF runtime security area as well. And I'll do another demo on that specifically. So what are the commands we're going to leverage? So we're going to run the install on a AKS cluster through Terraform. Then we're going to show you essentially these commands I'm going to run just at a high level. I want to show what those are. We're going to see that it is loaded. We're going to do a connectivity test. It's going to run some checks. And then we're going to enable Hubble, right? And then we'll look at that platform and we will go right into the demo. So shifting gears, the next video will dive right into the demo. Okay, so picking back up where we left off on the last video as far as what Cilium is. So I wrote a markdown file here just kind of going over some commands I'm going to run. So I'll make the screen a little bit larger on your end, but hopefully this comes through. Let me, no, control, get the settings, get this a little bit larger. I'll just extend this. Okay. Should come in a little bit better. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to run Cilium status wait. I'm going to show you some key details. So once you run this command, you'll see essentially the status. This will tell you what is enabled. Cilium's here, the operator, right? The operator is going to tell you desired, ready. It's going to tell you what's essentially managed, what Helm chart it's running on. Now we're running on, as you can see, Microsoft's version of this, right? So Microsoft's, it looks like 2 versions behind because right now they're on 1.14. So it might be a little different if you're doing this via Helm. I also deployed Istio as code as well natively, right? So do kubectl get pods. I'll show you all. Let me do kubectl get all, then we'll do a grep Istio. Okay, so if we can see there, that the command for Istio is already running in our services, right? So this is, as you can see, the Azure Service Mesh. I can run kubectl get services all, so we can get an understanding what's exposed external. So if I switch over, and I'll ensure I add another view in the background. If I switch over directly to my browser and I copy this IP, this is going to be our ingress external, our egress essentially, but that's going to be our external path into our cluster. Okay, so what we're going to do is paste that. There shouldn't be anything hosted on there, but we can see if we can make an API call and see if we get a return. Now we can also think about this through our own cluster. We can a get or ping 127. See, okay, so we're getting a response, right? Now I ran this in the background as well to see if I have anything running on that, but just to also populate external access to that area, right? So let me stop that ping from there. Now I can also, I already ran a connectivity test. If I do a kubectl get pods, do kubectl get pods all, right? So we can kind of see, I had a demo set up here for the Death Star, the TIE Fighter, right? Essentially showing you what type of commands you'll run to essentially observe that, right? So I generated some traffic earlier. I was trying to get, let me see here. Okay, no. So to show you natively what we have running, when I did this as code, you can have Cilium out of the box, right? So this is showing you that we have Cilium enabled. Now, if we do kubectl get pods in our kube system, we can also see that Cilium's already installed out the box. And then you have your metric server, think of that for your monitoring, and then your cloud node manager. Kubectl, let's get our deployments. And we can see how those kind of rolled out. So we have our Cilium operator sitting in our kube system, our metric server as well, and then we have our Cilium test. Essentially here was the demo that I deployed, and then we're running the latest Istio natively on our cluster. We can do a kubectl get nodes, we have both our agents. Let's do kubectl wide. And we can see that our parameter for the CBL mariner deployed is needed, and then you can also see the container runtime, right? So we have our two nodes up. Latest orchestrator is 1.28, publicly available on AKS, so I'm just running a little bit behind on that. But as far as what that looks like from a code perspective, I'll show you some of the parameters here. So we can see that when we created the node pool specifically, I have a smaller image. I just call out the OSQ Mariner. I have FIPS enabled. And then for our service mesh here, this is going to reflect Istio if you want to do this natively. And then if you want the out-of-the-box external and internal ingress deployed on deployment as well. And then for Cilium, this is just going to highlight the eBPF data plane, and then you're going to run Azure as a CNI for that. Now again, Cilium can also act as your policy enforcement for your network security. This was just to show you how you can get this up and running quickly, but what it looks like out of the box as well. So as you can tell, right, we do have our cluster essentially set up with Cilium, so then you can start taking advantage of the layer 3, layer 4 policies along with layer 7. I have yet to use the service mesh in this, but I also wanted to show that you can deploy Istio fully GA and supported. It's private in the sense that I have as a cluster API access to my private IP. However, you'll likely do this in production behind a VNet and a lower bastion that has access.